In this video, I'm creating a raspberry caramel. It has that little bit of tartness from the raspberry. We're going to pour that into a frame, cut it into individual squares. They're ready to either wrap, enrobe, or eat. First step for your caramel is to join the frames together. I'm using plastic frames. You can use a lined tin, or you can also use rods, which you would grease. We pour the caramel directly onto the bench surface. If you've got Laminex or stainless steel, you'll have to pour it onto a Silpat mat placed on a wooden board. I have some glucose here to join the frames. These are medium frames. We also have large frames, so if you're wanting to make more caramel at once, you can double the recipe, which will fit our large frames. So just a dot of glucose in the corner of each frame. And we stack them up. First step, we heat the raspberry puree. If you haven't got raspberry puree, blitz frozen or fresh raspberries, sieve out the seed and add 10% inverted sugar to achieve the exact same weight. Fresh cream, bring this just up to a simmer, then we're going to set it aside. That's come to a simmer now. I'm going to remove it from the heat and set it aside. We now start the caramel. This is a different caramel because we're creating a Maillard reaction, which is a browning of the proteins in the milk products rather than caramelizing the sugar. So it gives you a very different flavor. This is a beautiful raspberry caramel. If you want it to be harder, you need to cook it above 121 degrees Celsius. If you want it to be softer, you need to cook it lower than 121 degrees Celsius. So the degree of temperature that we cook it to determines how much water we evaporate and the end consistency of the caramel. In a saucepan, make sure it's a large enough saucepan because it will boil up at certain stages. Add in the water. Make sure everything is clean and free of any residue on the saucepan or any foreign objects in the ingredients. Place the sugar in and the liquid glucose. Now with this caramel, we can stir these three ingredients until they start to boil. Once they start to boil, you need to stop stirring until it reaches 145 degrees Celsius. At that time, we're going to add in additional ingredients. When we add in those additional ingredients, we whisk it continuously until we come to 121 degrees Celsius. We add the ingredients in stages to ensure we don't drop the temperature of the caramel too low as we're adding them. When you're cooking the caramel, it's important to cook it on a really high heat. We do lower the temperature at certain stages when we're adding in different ingredients, but then we push the temperature back up again. When we're working with acidic products such as raspberry, if we cook it too slow, we'll invert the sugar. So we'll actually make an inverted sugar. We do have a tutorial on that if you want to know more about that. If we make an inverted sugar, it's going to stay very soft and be difficult to cut. We've reached 145, so add in the cocoa butter. Drop the temperature a little bit. Mix that through, and then we're adding in some unsalted butter. The butter is going to caramelize, but this also gives us mouthfeel and helps to carry the raspberry flavour. If you don't have cocoa butter, you can use 100% butter, so replace the weight of the cocoa butter with butter. You don't have to fully incorporate the butter before adding in the cream and raspberry. Add the cream and raspberry in stages so it doesn't cool the mixture down too much. Continue whisking, add in the salt. Then we add in the bicarb soda. The bicarb soda is going to change the colour completely. It also helps to combine the fat and the solids together. When you first add it in, it may look a little green, but once you start whisking, it'll come back to that beautiful raspberry colour. That's the reaction with the oxidisation of the red fruits, which looks a little bizarre. We're now going to bring it to 121 degrees Celsius. You do have to be quite accurate. You must stir it continuously while you're reheating to ensure that it doesn't catch on the bottom of the pot. We're going to turn the temperature back up at this stage. Now this is not for the faint-hearted. It does take a little while to bring the caramel to 121 degrees. So if you have someone that's wanting to build up their right bicep, have them on hand to take over, because I think that probably takes between 5 and 10 minutes, depending how efficient your stove is, of consistent whisking once you've added all the ingredients. You can put a little bit of caramel here, so you can have a taste before you actually let it cool. So set this to the side so you've got a taste tester. Try not to move this. It is better that it cools completely in the one position. Otherwise you'll get wrinkles across the top of your caramel. The raspberry caramel has cooled completely. So I'm going to peel the Silpat back. While it's still in the frames, transfer it to a cutting board. With this caramel, you can simply take the frames off one at a time. It's really only the glucose that is making them stick together, but they'll come off cleanly. In terms of cutting, you've got two options. You can cut freehand, you can mark it out with a ruler, or you can use a cutting grid. These are great. These are marked in 2 centimetre increments, and you can also get them in 3 centimetres if you want your caramel a little bit larger. If you are going to use the cutting grid, you do need to spray it with vegetable oil to ensure that it's not going to stick to the caramel. I'm not going to use a cutting grid, so you can see what I'm doing as I'm cutting. If your knife starts to get a little bit sticky, you do need to put some oil on it so it doesn't stick to the caramel. So we're just going to cut individual squares. This cuts really beautifully. In between every few cuts, just oil the knife. Then we continue cutting. I'm going to cut these in individual cubes, but you can do rectangles. You can actually deposit this into a silica mold as well, so then you can get things like heart shapes, domes, individual caramel shapes. This is the most efficient way of doing it, by pouring it into the frames and then cutting individual pieces. You can coat them in chocolate, you can wrap them in cellophane, or you can leave them as they are. If you leave them as they are, they will absorb some moisture from the atmosphere and start to soften. Caramels are easy to cut, easy to separate. If you do cut them and leave them close together, they will join back up, especially if you're in a humid environment. I'm going to place these onto a plate. You can actually get edible wrappers, which you can wrap them in a cellophane-like wrapper that is completely edible. It's made from rice and it will actually dissolve on the palate, which is a good way to finish them, and it will seal the caramels as well. Try not to put your fingers on the top of the caramel because there's quite a bit of fat residue on there and you will leave a fingerprint. So I'll show you on one of these. If I put my finger on there, you can see that I have residue and a fingerprint on top. Here we have my raspberry caramel. They're delicious in flavour, easy to cut and amazing to eat.